Hey there, guys. How are you guys doing today? Uh, how are you doing? Sorry, I just realized I had my mic muted. Happy Wednesday. Hope everyone's having a great day. So I thought I would do another cooking commentary this week because when I did my last cooking stream, when I did my first live cooking stream, a lot of people were saying that the sausages that I had done via Sous Vide, they thought it was raw. And clearly it wasn't raw, but that got me thinking maybe people don't know sous vide that well. So I thought what I would do is kind of do a little demonstration of sous vide that I've done. So sous vide is cooking in a water bath, and the meat or whatever you're cooking. So with sous vide, you can actually do meats, you can do vegetables, you can do desserts even, and eggs. There's quite a lot of options you can do with that. But for this one, I thought I would do a sirloin tip roast. So a sirloin tip roast is a bit of a tougher cut of meat because it's more muscular. And I figured that would be a good way to demonstrate what sous vide can do. So sous vide is actually a French cooking term for, I believe it's being bagged or like under vacuum. Sorry, that's what it is. Sous vide means under vacuum. So what I would do actually is I would have my meat prepped, seasoned carefully, and then I would put it in a bag, a special bag. You can use any bag, mind you. So I used a food safe bag, and then I actually vacuum sealed that. So I pulled all the air out of that and I sealed it. The reason why you want to get all the air out of a bag is because that hinders the meat process. So with sous vide, you want that meat to be exposed to as much of the hot water as possible, and having that air inside there creates like a buffer zone, so not enough heat will transfer through. So it's all about surface contact, and you'll see that shortly in the video that I have prepared. So what I mean with surface contact is obviously the meat is in a bag, and that bag is in hot water. For this particular one, I did 135 degrees Fahrenheit in order to get a medium rare. Now to do, like I said, so that meat is now submerged in that water, and that way all parts of the meat are going to be exposed or have surface contact to that hot water. And the reason I prefer sous vide cooking over traditional cooking is because I can ensure that my meat will be properly cooked every time. There's no risk of overcooking it, no risk of undercooking it. Whatever you set the temperature at, you are going to hit internally in that meat. So I know it's a lot going on that I was kind of explaining. I will show you this video and I will comment on it as I go. I'll start and stop and kind of answer any questions anyone might have. So if you have a question, by all means, shout out, write it down, and I'll answer it as best as I can. Again, keep in mind, I am very much an amateur chef, so take what I say with a grain of salt. Obviously, do your own research. What I do is based off of over a year of research, doing sous vide cooking for various meats like pork, chicken, steak, or beef. But that said, let us start this video. So here is the water bath. So I'm just going to quickly pause this for a second and start. So my water bath is, all the products I have is Anova, not sponsored. And so sous vide is essentially this giant circulator stick that circulates the water in a container at whatever temperature you have it set at. So for this water, I have it set to 135 Fahrenheit, like I mentioned before. And you'll notice at the bottom of the sous vide, let me see if my mouse shows up, yes. These holes here, that's where a mini propeller is located, and that helps project the water, or circulate the water, sorry, as it goes around in a container like this. Now, my container is oval shaped, and that's ideal to have because you want the water to constantly move in that circular fashion. If you had, say, a square container or a circle container, obviously a circle would be a lot better because water will flow freely, whereas a square container or even a rectangle container, the water will hit the edges and kind of like bounce, and it won't really circulate as well, and that's what you want when you do sous vide cooking. So I had this set up for 135. Like I said, it took about 30 to an hour to get the water going. It all depends on what your initial water temperature is at. So I believe my water temperature started at 72 degrees Fahrenheit and I had to go up to 135. So it took a little bit of time. Obviously, this is a lot of water for one piece of meat, yes. But you need to have at least a certain percentage of this circulator submerged in order for it to properly work. So that said, I took my meat and I put it into the water, and that's all you do. So I cover it so all the heat and all this excess evaporation doesn't get lost. And that's something that I learned very early on, is I didn't have a cover for my containers. So obviously, as it's cooking for hours on end, it would evaporate. Again, I'm going to pause this here just to explain a little bit more. So then what's nice about having this lid is any of the heat that comes off of the water, because obviously when water heats up, steam happens, it gets trapped by this lid and it stays inside. So that helps keep that water at its ideal temperature. Otherwise, when it's exposed to the air, you do have heat transfer, so that water would cool down, which is not the greatest thing if you want to maintain a specific temperature in your meats. And it's a little hard to see, but there is a little grate here, or like a rack that I can use to help keep the meat submerged underwater. Because the worst thing you can have is doing a long cook and having your meat float and having parts of it not submerged in water, not heating up, because then that becomes uncooked, like it's raw, and you don't want to have half raw meat, half cooked meat. That's just a danger waiting to happen. So with this particular cut of meat, because of how tough it is, you do have to cook it for an extended set of time. For this particular one was 12 hours. Hey Frog, how are you doing today? I don't know if you were here at the very beginning. I'm just doing a breakdown of sous vide cooking. Because of my last cooking stream, a lot of people were saying that the meat that I was using was raw, even though I did cook it in this process. So as you saw that timer, I started it for 12 hours. This particular cut of meat, you do want to do it for about 12 to 13 hours to really make it tender. Yeah, so one thing I should mention with sous vide cooking is that unlike traditional cooking a steak on a pan or in a roast in an oven, you do it by temperature to make sure you get that everything's done to the doneness you like, as well as being tender. Normally, a sirloin tip roast is used for slow cooking, for Instapot stews or things like that. With sous vide cooking, temperature determines the doneness of it, obviously, but time determines the tenderness. So the longer you're cooking your food for, the more tender it actually becomes, which is quite different thinking in terms of doing traditional cooking. Like if I were to do a steak on a stove, or put a steak or a roast in the oven, the longer I cook it, the more overcooked it becomes, the more tougher it becomes. Whereas this one is, oh, hey Don, how are you doing today? Stream's going pretty well. I just started. Happy lurking, I guess. And hopefully, this information is kind of helpful, kind of new. Maybe might even convince you guys to try sous vide cooking on your own. But, sorry, where was I? Yeah, so time and temperature. So temperature tells you the doneness of your meats, and time will be how tender it is. So obviously with a sirloin tip roast, it is a bit tougher, so I had to cook it for a longer period of time. So again, I started at 12 hours, and now this is at the end of that 12-hour period. I did it throughout the whole day. I actually started this at 3:30 in the morning yesterday to get it cooking, and I didn't pull it out until after I finished work. So obviously timer's counting down for that 3, 2, 1, and then once your time's up, you can pull that meat out of the water bath. As you can see, there was a lot of condensation happening inside there because it has been cooking for 12 hours. That water is pretty hot. You have to be very careful, because even though it's water, you can still burn yourself and get pretty badly, especially with the higher temperatures. And obviously water does collect on that lid as, evaporation and stuff happens. So that's the grate that I mentioned before. So pretty much as soon as you're done there, you just pull that meat out. Be careful, because it is a lot of water, and You don't want to drip in everywhere, and you don't want to burn yourself too. Now, let me just pause that right there. So you saw how that meat looked when it went in, right? It was very. Let me just quickly rewind here. So you saw like it's pinkish, like typical meat would be. But then as soon as I pull that out, you saw how it is very dark. Now what that is also is not just the meat. That is also the juices from the meat. So whenever you're cooking anything, the protein will give off juices and moisture, and you'll see that when you do meats on your stove or anything. What's nice about sous vide though is you don't lose any of that moisture or any of that flavor, because yes, it comes out of the meat, but then it's trapped in that bag. So the meat is actually cooking in its own juices, so it's even getting more flavor, more intense umami, I believe it's called, that flavor content, or not content, but what's the term? That taste, like just that intensity of flavor. And with actually the leftover juices that you have, you could use it to make a stew, or not a stew, but like a gravy. You just have to strain out all the excess protein out of it, and then you would put it in a pan, heat that up, maybe add a little bit of cornstarch to thicken it up, and it turns into a really great gravy. Like I've done that before, and it's super delicious. I did not do that this time here, just because I wanted to focus more on the meat. So take the meat out, and then I have my little station already set up. So after this, you want to cut the bag open to take the meat out. Now you do notice I have a paper towel on my cutting board. This is because, again, that meat has been sitting in its own juices, so it's very moist. And you want to pat it dry, because when you're cooking, having like moisture on your meats and all that, it's not ideal, because then it doesn't get that nice sear, because now it's got that water barrier, or that moisture barrier on between the meat and the hot surface. So I'm taking the meat out, and as you can see, I'm being very careful. Like it's so tender that it's falling apart a bit as I am taking it out of the bag. So I'm using the tongs very carefully, and I'm patting it dry. I'm not going crazy hard on it, because obviously the meat will rip because it is that tender. And yeah, just quick pat down on all sides, on the back side and everything. And then I should mention, when I first bagged up this meat, I did actually season it with salt, pepper, and some, cayenne powder. Yes, I believe that's what it was. Just to give it a little bit of flavor profile. Now that said, obviously when it's in a bag and it's cooking in its own juices, those juices might wash off some of that seasoning. So you want to be very liberal when you first season it, because again, a lot of it will wash off with the meat juices. But again, it's soaking in that, so it's still coming back into the meat. That said though, in order to get a proper flavor on this, I do end up seasoning it again with some more salt and pepper. So yeah, you can see at the bottom there, I just get as much of that moisture off of the meat as possible. So here's a little bit of a close-up. Now you can see that the meat does look what I like to call gray meat, and essentially that is what it's going to look like when it comes out of sous vide, because what you are doing is essentially boiling the meat. You're not giving it any flavor, you're not giving it a hard sear or anything. So what happens when you boil meat? It turns gray, and unfortunately that does show what the meat looks like coming out, as you can see right here actually. So this is the part that was not in contact with the surface of the bag. So while it didn't get exposed to as intense of a heat as the outside was, it did still get exposed to heat, because what happens is with heat, and when cooking in general, heat will transfer through the bag, through the meat, to the center. And that's what you want. Like when you're cooking, you want the center of your meat to be at whatever temperature you want for your desired doneness. So like rare is what, 125-ish? And then medium rare is 135, and then so on and so on. So obviously for this meat, I wanted it to be 135. I believe that is wrong. Yeah, steak tartare. So yeah, steak tartare is raw meat, but it's not. It's also mixed with other things, so it's just like cilantro, some vinaigrette and stuff. I've had raw meats before. Actually, there was a dish when I went to visit Korea back in January of 2020 that was a raw beef dish, like a ground beef dish with a raw egg on it. And it's so delicious. Like, it's amazing. And raw meat is not necessarily... Yes, it has a raw egg on top. Yeah. It's so good. It's like one of my favorite dishes. Again, because it is raw meat, though, you do have to be careful that it's cooked in a hygienic area, a very sanitary place and all that. But yeah, so that's why with this meat, it looks brown, or it looks gray because it is boiled. But that doesn't mean it's raw, and it's not bad. That said, though, it's not visually appealing. And for me, I like my food to be visually appealing because I firmly believe we eat with our eyes first. So, whilst yes, I could actually just take that steak, or the roast out of the bag and just eat this right here as is, just slice it up and be good to go. And for me, that would be fine because it's just me eating it. But obviously for you guys, I want to give it a bit of color. I want to make it look more visually appealing because, you know, if it looks good, then you're going to feel better eating it, or you're going to enjoy it more. So here's what I was saying when I added a little bit more seasoning to it, some more salt. I added a little bit of pepper as well, just to both sides, just so that kind of goes in and gives it a little bit more of some more flavor. But yes, I've never actually had steak tartare. It is something I want to try one day, but I haven't had the chance to yet because I believe it can get pricey because it's more like a fancier kind of dish. So now here, obviously, I turn on my pan because you want to get a hot pan going here. So I'm just checking to make sure, like, you know, temperature-wise, it feels good, because if you put your meat in a cold pan, you're not going to get that nice sear on it. And everyone wants that nice sear because that gives it's, again, like I said, it's visually appealing. So once I get my pan nice and hot, I add a little bit of oil to it. There should be some audio from it. I tried to do a video where you could actually hear the sizzle of the roast, but I think this should be it. Oh, okay, no, it's not. I'll have to check it later. But so as you see that smoke coming out, that means your pan is nice and hot. So with sous vide, or with cooking in general, I don't need to actually move it around a whole lot, just because, you know, it just needs surface contact with the hot pan. And again, since the meat is already cooked, I don't need to put it on for too long on each side. I just want to get some nice color going, and that's it. Now you see I'm having a little bit of trouble picking up that meat because it is so soft, so tender, like it's hard to grip without it falling apart. And as you can see, like, it's just a couple, like 30 seconds on each side, not even, just to get that color going. And then obviously I do want to get the edges as well because, again, visually appealing. So I'm grabbing that steak. I'm just gonna call it a steak because it's a roast, but it's easier for me to just picture that. So I'm just getting it all along the edges and everything. Like, as you can see, like, it's just falling apart as I'm trying to pick it up because it is that tender. Like, it is melt in your mouth softness here. And then just like that, pop it off and you're good to go. Now, one thing I want to mention is with sous vide, I don't have to actually rest my meat. So I know when you're cooking anything on the stove or in the oven, you want to rest your meat so that the juices can soak back into the meat. With sous vide, you don't actually have to worry about doing that because it already has all the moisture inside it, because it didn't really lose all that moisture as you're cooking it on the stove top or in the oven. So I could go straight from board, cut right away, and you won't have all these juices spilling out everywhere because it's already soaked back into the meat. So from there, I just transition over to this view quickly. So you can see that steak right there. Like, that's a nice sear on it. You got some nice color going. It looks a lot better than that gray meat before. Yeah, and here, obviously, I want to be hygienic and everything. So I am putting on plastic gloves, because I will be handling that meat and I don't want to, risk potential cross-contamination. Now again, my kitchen is clean. I wash my hands and everything beforehand, but still, you always want to be safe. And just look how easily that knife cuts through that steak. It's like a hot knife through butter. And look at that even throughout there. So this is a better view with a bit better lighting. So you can see my steak, or my roast, is pink all the way through here. And that's what I was saying before, where you want as much surface contact with the hot water you want your bag to have as much surface contact with the hot water when you're cooking, because obviously you want that heat to transfer through evenly throughout your meats. Now I have a picture here I just want to show you guys. So generally, when you're looking at meats, this is the various types of or temperatures that you can have. So the top is a rare, medium, well, and then well done. I never ever go into this category ever. Most I'll ever go is medium if I need to. But you'll notice here how on the medium rare there is that little outline of lighter pink, and that's what you get when you are cooking on the stovetop, because your meat has contact with that hot pan all the time. So what you're actually doing is, while your interior may reach the temperature of 135, your exterior here is actually at a higher temperature. So you're actually overcooking the outside of your meat as opposed to the inside of the meat. Just with the whole heat transfer properties and everything, that's how it works, because your heat's coming from outside to in. So as soon as this hits that, then generally your steak is ready to go, or once it heats up to that temperature that you want. And again, you can see that as you go down through these other images here. So like on the well, you see how that's pretty much like burnt down here almost, and then just at the faintest of pink here. That's because that temperature again is more, the outside is more exposed to heat than the interior is. And that's what I love about sous vide cooking, is I don't ever have to worry about that, because that temperature is even all the way throughout. So with the temperature on the out ends here, it's the exact same temperature as what's inside here. Now, yes, I understand this is very pink. It looks like it could be a little bit raw, but trust me, it's not. It is cooked to 135 Fahrenheit, and it is like super tender, super juicy. And this is what I said before about not needing to rest. Like, yes, there is a little bit of moisture on the board here, but not as much moisture as it would be if it was just a steak straight out of the frying pan and onto the cutting board, and then you cut into it right away without resting. Like, that would give off a lot of moisture, because that's the moisture that it's losing. Whereas this here, all that moisture stays inside the fibers of the steak. And so, like I said, with sous vide, there are a bunch of different rules that you have to know about when you're cooking. So for example, when you're cooking sous vide, yes, you could cook it rare at 125, but you cannot cook it longer than 4 hours at below 130. The reason for that is when it's cooked at such a low temperature of 125 to 130, or like 129, that's the potential breeding ground for bacteria. So bacteria kind of dies out at 130 and above when you're cooking, but anything below it, bacteria will grow, and that will get you sick. So that's why they say no more than 4 hours. With this one, I did it again for 12 hours, so I'm guaranteed that I'm fine. And I did it obviously over the 130 temperature. Another rule is that you have actually a lot of leeway when you're cooking meats. So a regular steak, you could do it at any temperature and potentially do it at, what is it? Anywhere from 45 minutes to up to 4 hours. So you have a lot of leeway on that as well. So say you're busy working, right? So you have lunch hour and you want to do a steak for dinner. You could get the water bath going and have it in the water by 1 o'clock, and you're just working. And then by 3 o'clock, your steak will come out and it'll still be perfect as if you cooked it for 45 minutes as opposed to 3-4 hours later. Now, the reason for that, they say the 4 hour range is generally because after that, the meat starts to over tenderize, if you will. So like I did say, you can't overcook a steak, and that's true, but you can over tenderize it. So especially when you get to the higher temperatures, like 8 hours or 12 hours, especially if it's a thin piece of meat, like 1 to 2 inches. And what would happen is it turns into like a mush. Have you ever taken meat and tried to tenderize it with, pineapple juice? Yes, pineapple juice will help tenderize meats a lot faster, but left for too long, and it just becomes this gooey mush kind of paste in your hands when you deal with the meat, and that's not ideal. No one wants to eat that. So that's why they give you like a time frame. Now that will vary dependent on what you're cooking, what temperature you're cooking at. Actually, no, the temperature won't impact that, but what you're cooking will. So eggs could actually be done in sous vide style. I've done that before, just out of curiosity, and I made poached eggs at, I believe it was 153 Fahrenheit for 1 hour. And honestly, it came out to like a perfectly beautiful poach. The exterior whites were runny still, but that center was solid enough that you could handle it, but liquidy enough that if you cut into it, it was just going to flow out everywhere. And it's perfect. And if you have trouble doing a poached egg like I do in a saucepan, that was a game changer for me. Now, granted, you're thinking, well, you did it for an hour, and you could do an egg on the saucepan in like 10 minutes max. I'm like, yeah, that's true. The only trade-off when doing sous vide cooking is that you are doing cooking for a lot longer than, say, doing it the traditional way. And I get that. It's personal preference. Like I said, with people working from home with COVID and everything, this might be a beneficial way to do things. Just because I could put in the meats in the morning, and then come lunchtime or dinner time, it's already cooked, and I just have to quickly sear it, and then I'm done. Actually, speaking of sear, something I wanted to do is I actually want to show you how long I actually took to sear this thing. So I have a timer here. I'm going to start it as soon as that meat touches the pan, and we'll see how long I actually seared this for. And this is why I love sous vide. Like if you're in a rush to, like, say you only have like half an hour for lunch or an hour for lunch, and you don't want to spend all your time cooking. Like I said, I can have the meats cooking in the morning while I'm working, and then all I have to do is just pop it out of the bag, put it on a stovetop, and just do this, like a little bit of sear. So like this one side alone, I had it down for 30 seconds, or a little bit longer than 30 seconds because I have a little trouble picking it up. But then on the other side, again, it's down for only 30 odd seconds, and then you do the sides. So that's what's beautiful. Like I could have this cooked and look nice within a minute to 2 minutes tops. And again, obviously, depending on how hot your pan is, the faster it'll sear, the faster you'll get that crust on it. So my pan was a little too hot, so you see that oil was splashing around a little bit. That was my fault. Gotta be careful because you don't want to burn yourself. But yeah, we're coming up to a 115 here, and I've already got all the sides done. I just got one side left to quickly just give a little bit of a color to. And just like that, I'm done. Like 1 minute 33 seconds. That's the whole time that it actually touched the pan for. Everything else was just sitting in that bag in hot water. So that's kind of awesome. Like you can do stuff like that. What else? Sorry, I got a little bit sidetracked. I should have written down the steps I wanted to go through. It's my fault. But back to the rules. So I did talk about the temperature. I did talk about. I touched on seasoning. Because you are putting this in a bag, you don't want to overly season it, or not overly season it, but like put too much stuff on it because it will wash off a little bit in the bag. So I've done actual marinades. I've done dry rubs, and they all work. Like I've done pork belly that's been dry rubbed with salt and pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, cayenne powder, and yes, once it comes out of the bag, some of it has been washed off, but you can still smell all those flavors incorporated into that meat because it does cook in as well. Then obviously I do season it a little bit afterwards just to compensate for what it has lost. Now, one thing I want to mention, and what the beauty of sous vide is that I could cook fresh or I could cook frozen. That has no impact whatsoever. Like this meat actually was sitting in my freezer since I believe it was early December. Either early December or mid-November. And that's what I also love about vacuum sealing, is that it keeps meats fresher longer. So you put meat in a Ziploc bag and you put it in your freezer, you're bound to get freezer burn. You're going to get ice crystals forming on that thing. Not with sous vide, or not with vacuum seal bags. You might get a little bit of ice crystals because there's still some air inside the bag that you weren't able to get out. And yes, it freezes and causes a little bit of ice crystal, but it's minimal compared to what you get as opposed to putting it into a Ziploc bag and just putting that in the freezer. But like I said, so I can actually take this straight out of my freezer, pop it in that hot water bath, and it will defrost the meat and then cook the meat for me. The only thing that you have to do and take into account is additional time for freezing or for defrosting. So I believe the general rule is 1 hour for every inch of thickness of the meat. So if your meat is 1 inch thick, like you're doing a steak at 1 inch thick, and it's frozen, and you're cooking it for say 45 minutes, the bare minimum, then you would do it for an hour and 45 minutes. For me though, I never do a 45-minute rule. I always do minimum 1 hour just to be safe. And then I'll obviously add time on for defrosting. Another rule of thumb you could do for meats, especially if it's for a longer cook, you could just do half the time of meat. So if I'm cooking it for an hour and it's frozen, I'll do like an hour and a half, depending on what I'm cooking. Like if it's chicken or something like that. But again, it tastes the exact same as if it was fresh when it's frozen, and that's something I really love. So if you want to meal prep in advance and do like a whole big purchase from Costco or from your local grocery store of meats, season it all up, portion it, and vacuum seal it, and then put it into your freezer for when you're ready, you can do that. Like if you were to look at my freezer right now, it's just got a whole bunch of like frozen meats that you can do. And I actually have marinated chicken breast in my freezer as well. So what's nice about that too is that when it does cook, not only is it cooking in its own juices, but it also has that marinade sauce that it also helps cook into it, so that also soaks into that and gives it more flavor. It penetrates the meat. Obviously, you could also poke holes in the meat so that the marinade will get in deeper, obviously. Let me see, what other rules are there that vary for this? Oh, okay, yes. So one thing I should mention is with sous vide, you can't leave your food out for too long afterwards. And in general, you don't want to leave meats out for a long period of time after you're cooking it or leaving it on the table, because that's just not healthy. But especially more with sous vide, because it is cooked at a lower temperature than you normally would on a stove. Like I said, the exterior is always overcooked and the interior is just barely cooked or cooked to the temperature that you want. Sous vide obviously doesn't have that same condition. So this outer edge has only been cooked for 135 Fahrenheit for 12 hours. So that's still a potential breeding ground for bacteria if you leave your meats out and allow it to cool down to less than 129 or less. That's when bacteria could start growing on your meats, and again, that is bad for your health. It's just like a not germ warfare, but essentially is bad bacteria that you don't want. What they recommend doing is, if you don't want to eat your meats right away after you cook it, you have to ice bath it right away. So say I was doing a big cook for a family coming by and I'm doing this huge roast. Now I would cook that roast in the water bath, get it done the day before so it's done. And then I would take it out and put it into an ice bath right away. So that drops that temperature. You want to shock it and drop that temperature as fast as you can. So then you can put it into the fridge so it keeps. That way you don't have to worry, and you can even leave it in the bag too. That's fine. Now the reason I mentioned that is, like I said before, for an example, say I'm doing a huge roast for a family gathering of, 10, 12 people coming. Normally a huge roast like that would take anywhere from 24 hours maybe, depending on what you're cooking, because brisket, I believe, is actually a 24 to potentially 48 hour cook. And on the sous vide forums that I've been on, there have been people saying they've done cooks for 48 hour plus temperatures or plus times. I think I saw someone say they did it even for 3 days, just because with sous vide you can do that and you never overcook that meat, but it helps tenderize the meat. So sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. By doing that, by cooking it in advance and then freezing it, you cut down the amount of time that you need to warm it back up. So let me put it like this. So I had that roast going 24 hours, it's done. Then I shock that thing and I put it in an ice bath to drop that temperature, then boom, it's in the fridge. Then the next day when I'm ready to get ready for the party or the gathering, I only need to just warm the meat back up. It's already cooked, and that's the beauty part of that. This is already cooked. So it's put in the fridge, and it's already at 135 cooked, medium rare. So that's perfect. So then what I would do is I would put that back into the water bath at a temperature lower than my initial temperature. So say I do the roast at 140, or no, I'm going to say 135 for a medium rare. So say I do a roast at 135 for the 24-hour period. When I'm ready to warm it back up on the day of, I can actually put it into a water bath at say 125, because all I'm doing is just warming up the meat. Like the meat is already cooked. You're just warming it up, bringing it back up so that it's not ice cold in the middle from being in the fridge. And that's the beauty of sous vide as well, is that you can actually pre-cook all your meat and then freeze it. And then when you're ready to eat it, all you have to do is just warm it up in a water bath. And for not too long too, like maybe 45 minutes in a water bath to an hour. And that's a lot easier than having to try and figure out waking up early in advance and doing this 24 hours or 48 hours in advance. And a lot of people have done that. A lot of people like doing that because you could actually have a whole freezer full of pre-cooked meat that all you have to do is just warm it back up in a water bath that's lower than the temperature you cooked it at, and you're good to go. And then quickly pop it on the frying pan and you're done. So there's that set of rules. And then another set of rules. I know there's a lot of rules, it sounds like I'm saying, and compared to traditional cooking, yes, there are, and I'm not going to lie. That said, though, the trade-off is a whole lot more time to do what you need to get done. Like, again, this cooked for 12 hours. In that time frame, I could cook side veggies, I could cook potatoes, I could bake a cake even. Like, I could do so much additional stuff whilst this is cooking in this water bath. And that frees up so much more time for me. And yeah, like, some people can finish their meats and stuff on a frying pan, or you can even put it in your oven under the broiler for a couple of seconds just to give it that nice sear as well. I've done that with pork belly, where obviously I don't want to put it into my frying pan because that kicks up a lot of oil and everything, or sorry, it splatters quite a bit. So I would put that in my oven under the broiler and just let that get that pork belly super crispy on top. Oh, actually, one thing I should mention is the reason why you do long cooks for larger pieces of, or for more tougher pieces of meat, is because you want to get that fat inside to break down. There was a term, it's hard to remember what it was called. It's when you're what is it? It's on the tip of my tongue. This is going to drive me crazy. But you want to get all the fatty muscles and everything here. You need time for it to break down, and it's not gelatinous, but render. Sorry. So yeah, you want that stuff to render down. So again, with like pork belly, when I did that, obviously with pork belly, you have that thick piece of fat on the top of it. By putting it in sous vide, that breaks it down. It makes it so soft, so tender. Then you throw that thing under the broiler for like a minute or so. You got to keep an eye on that because that could easily overcook. And then that pork belly, or that fat cap, is just melt in your mouth like butter. It is so good. I definitely recommend it one day. Actually, talking about it kind of makes me want to eat some more pork belly. So maybe in the future, I might do another commentary video showcasing pork belly and just showcasing like that fat cap that just like falls apart in your mouth. But yeah, so this is it, I believe, for like the little sous vide instructional kind of spiel that I wanted to go through. Again, it was just something that was going through my mind when I was doing my last live cooking, and people were saying that the sausages looked raw inside. Again, with sous vide, it may not look browned or cooked like you would if you put it on a stove or in the oven, but I can promise you that it is fully 100% cooked. And in my opinion, so much better. The steaks that I've done with this device have honestly been so much better than what I would get in a restaurant. And I can cook it to my personal preference. I don't have to worry about it being overcooked, being undercooked. If I want it slightly pinker or slightly redder, or sorry, yeah. If I want a little bit more cooked, I can do that. If I want a little bit undercooked, I can do that too. It's all up to me. But yeah, highly recommend trying sous vide if you guys ever get the chance to do it for either for yourself, or if you have someone who has someone who has a sous vide, get them to try and do something for you to cook. Honestly, it's a game changer, and I think you'll love it. And there are some big names out in sous vide right now. There is the Jewel, there is Anova. As you saw, my products were Anova just because I got it on sale, actually. But I'm honestly happy with it. I've been using it on and off mostly on for, how many years now? For quite a few years. At least the last 3 years, I want to say I've been doing sous vide cooking. And I've never been disappointed. When I first started out, yes, I was a little bit disappointed because I was still learning the process, so I had a lot of mistakes. But obviously I've gotten a lot better at it, and I know what I'm doing now. And like I said, you can do more than just meats and vegetables. You can do things like desserts. I've done, cheesecake in a sous vide bath. So I would mix up the mixture, put it in those glass cannon jars, and you carefully submerge that into the water. You have to be very careful with glass jars because the sudden change in temperature will crack the glass. And the reason I say that is because for cheesecakes, it's cooked at a very, very high temperature. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. I'd have to look at my notes. But when you go from room temperature to suddenly like 50 plus Fahrenheit, that glass could shatter like that in an instant. So you got to be careful about that. You want to bring the glasses up to temperature first, and then you put it in, so then there's less of a shock. I learned that the hard way, and when you have that big container and all of a sudden you have eggs spilling everywhere or cheesecake mixture just polluting that water, it's not fun. And then it gets into your sous vide machine and it's a hassle to clean. But yes, sorry, I kind of went on a bit of a tangent there. It's very versatile. The one thing you do have to keep in mind is some vegetables and some meats, and this is actually something I never knew before, and I learned only through doing sous vide. They give off gases. So when you put things like asparagus in a bag, that actually gives off gas as it's cooking, and it will cause the bag to float, which you do not want to have happen, because then obviously it doesn't evenly cook. So you will have to invest in like maybe some weights or jimmy rig something. I've done it where I've actually taken that metal grate, that grate right there, and I would tip it sideways so it sits inside underneath the water bath and it pins the food down. Like that's what I've had to do in order to keep the meats from my vegetables from floating. And same thing with pork. Pork surprisingly also floats. So when I've done things like pork loins, pork chops, and I put it in the water bath, it's instinctively going to float. So again, I have to either use this grate to hold it down, or I've actually gone out and bought like 5-pound weights, like those plates, 5-pound plate weights. I would vacuum seal that so it's in a bag, and then I would lay that on top of ribs that I would put in my sous vide machine just to keep it underwater so that it gets an even cook. Oh, if you ever get the chance, doing ribs via sous vide, it's amazing. They were like fall off the bone, tender, like it's ridiculous. Now, that said, ribs are one of those items where you need a long cook time. I believe the shortest I've ever done ribs has been 10 hours at 140-ish, the late 140s, I believe. I have to, again, check my notes. And you can go as long as even doing 24 hours at a lower temperature, obviously, though. I think 24 hours is more at the 132 Fahrenheit range. But then that just the temperature or just the texture alone in that is insane. Like the lower temperature ribs for the longer cook time are more tender. Like they just fall apart in your fingers. Like it's almost like pulled pork consistency. Whereas when I did for my 10-hour cook, it had a little bit more bite to it, more like traditional barbecue smoked ribs, or like barbecue ribs, where it has a little bit of pull, but still, like it took very little effort to just get the bone to pull away from the ribs. So it has a little bit of snap to it, a little bit of bite, which is kind of nice, get that traditional kind of rib texture and taste, versus say doing it where it just fall off the bone, pulled pork, just melt in your mouth goodness. And it's the exact same piece of meat and everything. So I would highly recommend playing around with sous vide if you ever get that chance. There is a lot of things you can do with it. And one of my friends, she does cocktails, and you can actually use sous vide for cocktails. How? I do not know, because I've never done that. She would be the one to ask for. I believe this is her channel. Yes, her name is Bindi Smalls. She does cocktails, a cocktail stream, I believe, weekly with her husband. And she's just a fountain of knowledge on like doing sous vide cocktail stuff. And like I said, you can, if you're a vegetarian also, you can use sous vide for veggies as well. And they come out a lot tastier in my opinion. Like I like them, but they're cooked at such a high temperature. I think they're cooking at about 180 degrees Fahrenheit. And you can do mashed potatoes in this thing. Like I didn't know you could, and I tried it one day, and it was insane. Like I would take potatoes, I would cube it, put it in the bag with some butter, some milk, some salt, vacuum seal that. You got to be very careful when you vacuum seal. You don't want any liquid getting into your machine, otherwise that's going to cause issues. So you got to be very careful with that. And then you just put it and let it cook for a couple hours at 180 Fahrenheit. and then you take it out of the bag and you just kind of take a rolling pin, or I don't even need a rolling pin. You can just take your hand in a like an oven mitt, just because again it's a hot bag, and you can just smush it into like your own version of mashed potatoes, and it is the creamiest mashed potatoes I have ever eaten in my life. Would I do it again? Oh, in a heartbeat. But it does take a while to make, and I gotta wonder sometimes, is the trade-off worth the result? That's up to you to decide. For me, for meat, for sure, I would rather wait and get like a delicious tender piece of meat versus maybe waiting to do mashed potatoes. I probably would just do it the traditional way because it's a lot faster and a lot easier to deal with. But yeah. And I do admit, though, the only downside about sous vide cooking is there is a little bit more waste involved. Like, again, I have this bag here, so what am I going to do with that? You know, you throw it out. So it is garbage waste that you do end up having more of. And there, again, like you have the juice in the bag as well. Like you have all this juice right here in the bag that you have to decide what you want to do with. Do you want to turn that into a gravy? Or at the end of the day, you just say, you know what, I don't want to, I'm just going to toss it. Again, it's up to you. I've done both ways with that, and you can't go wrong either. So yeah, actually, you can see right here, I label all my foods. So this is actually October 4th, 2020 that I have done this sirloin. I first bought this sirloin tip roast. Wow, that was a long time ago. But you know what? It was still fresh. Like, it was tender as if it was brand new, fresh day of. Yeah, okay, wow, that's actually been in my freezer for a while. Did not know that. But you know what? I mean, when you look at this, does that look like it's over a year old? Like cutting through this thing, like when you see the insides, does that look like, would that pass as a fresh steak, or would you know that that is over a year old? Like, that's just insane. So that's what I love about a vacuum sealing and sous vide cooking. Like, it opens up so much more possibilities going through. But yes, that is my sous vide kind of spiel for the day. Sorry, that took a little bit longer than I expected it to. 54 minutes. Wow. As you can tell, this is a topic that I'm very, very, I don't want to say passionate about, but I'm very much into. Like, it's something that I really like, really enjoy doing, and maybe with a shorter cook, I will do a live sous vide cooking. Maybe I might do chicken, actually. I know I plan to do chicken eventually for just my own personal meals. So I might actually just film what doing a sous vide chicken is. So you can kind of see how that compares to meats. That said, I did say I'm going to do some Smash Bros. So what I'm actually going to do is do a quick bathroom break and get some water, and then I will be right back to play some Smash Bros. On the Switch. See you guys in just a little bit.